Good morning, everyone. There's a beautiful poem called "The Man in the Glass," and it goes like this. When you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the world makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that man has to say. For it isn't your father or mother or wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The fellow whose verdict counts most in your life is the one steering back from the glass. He's the fellow to please, never mind all the rest, for he's with you clear to the end. And you've passed your most difficult, dangerous test if the man in the glass is your friend. You may fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get pats on the back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartache and tears if you've cheated the man in the glass. In this week's parsha talks about who a Kohen is allowed to marry and who a Kohen is not allowed to marry. Now, one of the restrictions on a Kohen is that he's not allowed to marry a widow. And the question is, why is a Kohen forbidden from marrying a widow? So one answer given is that many times the Kohen Gadol didn't survive Yom Kippur, because if he went into the Holy of Holies and he wasn't on the right spiritual plane, he would die in the Holy of Holies. That's why they put a rope around his leg to pull him out. So the Torah has compassion for the widow. She already lost one husband, and since so many Kohen Gadol didn't survive Yom Kippur, the Torah didn't want her to have to go through the loss of a husband a second time in life. But there's a fascinating answer given by the Chida, who is an 18th century scholar, and he quotes from Yehuda Anasi from the 12th century. And he says the following, which is astonishing. He says, we all know the story of King David and Bathsheba. The Kohen Gadol could go into the Holy Holies, and these are his words, and he may be infatuated with a certain woman. And he may pray, God forbid, that this woman should lose her husband so he could marry her. And therefore the Torah says to the Kohen Gadol, don't even go there. Ain't going to happen. Because you're not allowed to marry a widow anyways. And the question is, the Kohen Gadol, the holiest Jew in the holiest day in the holiest place, we suspect him of maybe doing something so improper? And the answer is that when you look back in Bereshit, you see that there's two descriptions of the creation of man. In the first description, in chapter 1, it says man is made in the image of God. And the second description describes man as being made dust from the earth. And the Torah is trying to tell us that a human being could reach the pinnacle of greatness and heights to be angelic, like the image of God, and the word Adameh, Le'elyon, can mean in the image of God, or from the word Adam, Adamah, dust of the earth. Every human being could be the greatest of the greatest and the lowest of the lowest. And that's our choice. Just because you're the high priest on Yom Kippur and you're in the Holy of Holies, don't think you're not human anymore. Don't think you're not susceptible to the same human urges, desires, temptations. And the greatest men can fall. And therefore always recognize your humanness and your vulnerability. And always guard yourself from sin, because every human being could be like the angels or like the animals. And we see this throughout human history, how human beings could rise to the greatest heights or descend to the greatest depths. And the choice ultimately is our choice. They tell a story about an artist who wanted to paint the most beautiful person. So he found the most beautiful person, he had him sit for a portrait. And then years later he said, you know what, I already painted the most beautiful person, let me paint the ugliest person. So he went to the Bowery, to where all the drunken bums were lying, and he found this dirty, disheveled looking guy, and he said, come, I want you to sit in my studio for a portrait. And he painted a portrait of this person. And when he finished the portrait, he said, let me go have you clean up, I'll go have a barber come and give you a shower, a new set of clothing, and then you'll come down, I'll feed you dinner. When he came back after being cleaned up and showered and bathed and manicured and shaven and a haircut and a suit, he came down, he sat down, and he saw he was the same person he had painted many years ago, the most beautiful person. Every person has the most beautiful version of themselves and the most ugliest version. And only we know who we really are. And so when you look in that glass, in that mirror, everyone else may see something else. But the real question is, who are we? And we have the choice to be in the image of God or to be like the dust of the earth. So